I would like to share my screen for my presentation. I have a short PowerPoint presentation. It's really enlightening how you organized the previous session, where the focus was on the issue of migration, which definitely is one of the significant issues relating to security, peace, and development in Africa and beyond. And so that was kind of like a good focus on a specific issue, and to look at how some dynamics are influencing this particular issue of migration. In this panel, we are taking this more to the broader question that you suggested for us, which is, why is the achievement of sustainable peace and development in Africa still so elusive? So I will try to address this issue from the perspective of peace and conflict studies, which is the focus of my work for the last 30 years or so. In order to start with this, I would like to just share a model that we often, I think, very common to many people in our field of peace and conflict resolution, where we assume that when there are violent conflicts, whether they are direct violence or indirect violence, there are always tendency first to try to manage the conflict and to establish some form of peacekeeping to stop the violence and whatever is causing the symptoms of violence. When this can work, and that's where peacekeeping, of course, is a big approach to how to address such issues. Conflict resolution comes as an approach to try to understand the underlying factors that are causing the conflict, and to try to help parties in conflicts to understand their basic needs and mutually find ways to satisfy them for themselves and for others. And in doing so, hopefully conflict resolution will prevail. Conflict transformation and conflict prevention relate more to trying to get into the deeper underlying factors that would continue to proliferate a conflict and continue to, even if you resolve it once, you're still going to deal with some of the issues that are continuing to cause it, more of the structure and culture factors. And that's where conflict transformation works on those deeper issues through peace building and other methods, with the hope that we reach a point of conflict prevention. So I guess if I take it back to the question for this panel of why is peace and development are elusive until now in Africa, it seems that what we are trying to, we are aspiring to achieve is to reach this point of the link, the intersection between what we call conflict transformation, peace building, and conflict prevention, which is referred to often in our field as positive peace. It's not only about stopping violence, it is about actually prosperity, moving forward, healthier relationships, people who are more capable, and institutions on addressing conflict as it emerges in a healthy manner. And that is what is conflict prevention. And of course, that will entail having early warning methods and good tools for how you can actually prevent the violent elements of conflict, knowing very well that conflict will always exist. I think it can sometimes be elusive to think that we should, as humanity, strive for a time when we have no conflict. That has never been the objective. Realistically, of course, the conflicts will always exist, but the success of communities and nations and individuals is always about how we can prevent the violent elements of conflict and how we can work hard to transform any conflict into something positive for those involved. And thinking of Africa as a continent in this situation, I think that we can always draw on a real example of a continent that has supposedly succeeded in reaching that level of conflict transformation and conflict prevention and peace building, and that is Europe. When we think of how Europe struggled with wars, internal wars for centuries, And only in the 20th century, they struggled with two major world wars, killing millions of people. Ethnicity was factor in conflicts there. Religion was factor at the time. Nationalism, you name it. Economy. There are so many factors that contributed to wars and conflict in Europe. It is amazing to see that how in the last 50 or 60 years that they have been able to establish not only a state of peace among all of them, but also to develop a union where, I mean, who would have thought in 1943 or 44 that a German can travel to France and work there or vice versa, and to have the same currency and not to need a visa. All those are not achievements that happened by coincidence. Of course, it took deliberate effort over many decades. As a matter of fact, I have been making sure to teach about this in my classes, and it was fascinating to look at all the documentaries about how the concept of European Union started after World War II, and the steps that were taken diligently since then to establish what we have now as the European Union. And I mentioned the European Union not only because it's a success story about how they stopped violence happening between the nations and people living in that continent, and now living in a state of peace, but also to look at how realistic it is that they know how to deal with conflict when it emerges. It is not that because they established the European Union that now they don't have conflicts. No, they do have. And as a matter of fact, the question of migration that came up in the previous session, I think it raises a lot of challenges and a lot of conflicts in Europe. And divisions between people on very ethical levels. You have issues sometimes of the financial challenges, like when Greece was unable to pay its debt to the European Union and to other specific countries. I imagine if this had happened 100 years ago, probably there would have been a war against Greece for not paying their debt. But now they have mechanisms, that's the conflict prevention, is that they have mechanisms to how to deal with conflicts, no matter how difficult and complex they are. And so when I say that we want to be here, I imagine that for Africa and as Africans, we dream of a time when we will be able to have this form of true African union, not just one building in Addis Ababa, but with some branches here and there. We want a union that is based on this sustainable peace, the question that was raised for us for this group.